Yes, Attorney Mel.
Yes, the memorandum circulars apply to rental payments accruing during the community quarantine, notwithstanding the expiration of the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, as long as the period covered is until GCQ.
All right. I think that's clear enough. So we'll move on to the next question. Can the guidelines apply to dues existing before the declaration of the community quarantine? Attorney Mel or Ms. Werlian can answer.
The answer is no. The guidelines apply only to rental payments falling due within the community quarantine. So hindi po pwede yung mga rental payments that have become due on March 14 before the issuance or before the declaration of the state of calamity and the imposition of the community quarantine.
All right, thank you, Yusek. Moving on to the third question. Is the guidelines applicable for tenants whose contract of lease expired during the community quarantine?
Is Attorney Mel here? No.
Yeah.
Okay, guidelines apply also to tenants whose contract of lease expired during the community quarantine. If it expired in April or May or June, you're still covered. You're covered by the guidelines. So a 30-day grace period may be imposed against the collection by the lessor, and then a 6-month period also will apply to the arrangement between the tenant and the lessor. I'm sure there will be a subsequent question. What will be the protection of the lessor in this case where the lease has already expired? First, you may apply the rental deposit, the rental down payments that have been made to the months following to the rental fees following the expiration of the contract if the tenant still stays. Rental payment deposits and down payments, I understand, maybe 1 month, at least 1 month, 1 month deposit and 1 month rent. So this covers 2 months. It may be applied if in case the tenant still has arrears and cannot pay. And if you want to be sure that you're going to be paid, if the money's with you or if the payment has been with you, so you can keep it and not refund anything to the lessor, to the tenant, if this is sufficient to cover the lease payment.
Attorney Mel, do you have something to add?
No more, Thea. Maybe I can take the other succeeding questions.
All right, thank you. For your next question, does it only cover those whose businesses had ceased and not those businesses with partial operation? Owners operating in limited capacity were also greatly affected. Attorney Mel, please.
Thank you. Yes, the memorandum circulars really states that it covers residential rents, commercial rents, and other sectors considerably affected by the community quarantine or by the government restrictions. So it doesn't qualify whether there was partial businesses are partially operational or totally not operational.
Thank you, Attorney Mel. Anyone from the panel who would like to add? All right, so we'll move on. Yes, Ms. Pearl.
Yes, no, you can continue, Thea.
All right. So for our next question, can payment on rentals be waived during ECQ instead of just granting grace periods? Miss World, perhaps you can answer this.
Yes, payment on rentals can be waived kasi nakasaad naman po sa provision natin sa MC na out of generosity, pwedeng i-waive siya ng lessor instead of just granting grace period.
So if I may supplement the answer, uh, rentals may be waived by commercial lessors or residential lessors. We are not mandating them to waive the rentals, but they are merely encouraged by the government to waive out of generosity.
I think the question means, Thea,
Yes.
I think the
Yusek.
question is it can be in the alternative. If the question is in the alternative, a waiver of rental or extension of grace period, the grace period is the one that is mandated by law, but any arrangement between tenant and lessor may be made. So if you want to extend both, that is most welcome. But if you want to extend only the waiver, you will have to discuss the matter of the grace period with the tenant.
Thank you, Yusek. I'm going to read one of the chat questions here from a consumer from Pitt's Restaurant, also in relation to this question from Carlo Granaderos. So here in Cebu, the quarantine status has been changing from MGCQ, then back to GCQ, but tenant already started the 30-day grace period during the initial declaration of the MGCQ or the Modified General Community Quarantine. Will this be changed since we are now back to GCQ?
We will have to seek guidance first from the IATF on this one, because considering the Bayanihan to Hilas 1 Act's expiration. Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
you said.
Yusek.
Yes. On this question, we'll have to seek guidance first from the IATF. We'll get back to them as soon as we get the response of the IATF.
Thank you, Yusek. For our next question, will the unpaid rents incur interest, charges, or penalty?
Can I
Attorney
answer?
Mel? Yes,
Yes.
Attorney Mel.
The answer to this is we should qualify our answer to this. Will the unpaid rents incur interest, charges, or penalty? For rents that are due before the ECQ, MECQ, and GCQ, interest can be charged based on their agreement or contracts. But for covered rents, the memorandum circular states that it will not incur interest, charges, and penalties. And this extends also to the 6-month installment period. It will not also incur interest, charges, or penalty.
All right, so it's clear. No interest, charges, or penalty.
Except for rents due before the quarantine.
Yes. So for our next question, when does the 30 days grace period for a lessee starts for those who rents a commercial space? So kailan magsa-start for commercial space? Miss
Yeah, this
World?
was clear.
Okay. Yes, Attorney Mel.
Werlin, you may wish to answer.
Okay. You may go ahead, please. You may answer it, please.
Okay. So as discussed by USEC earlier on, the 30-day grace period starts. This applies to both the commercial and residential rents. It starts from the last due date of the rent due during the 3 community quarantines or upon lifting of the community quarantine, whichever is longer. So kung ano po yung mas mahaba ba yung last due date or yung from the lifting of the community quarantine. Pero kung tutuusin, it is the latter, yung lifting, from the lifting which is longer. Kasi kung ang last due date niya falls after the lifting, hindi na po covered yung rent na due na yun.
Thank you, Attorney Mel. For next question, if the lessor need the leased property for personal use, can he ask the lessee to vacate it after the 30-day grace period?
Not if there's a contract. If there is no contract, that means the arrangement is on a month-to-month basis. But if there is, the lessor will have to finish the contract.
Thank you, Yusek. Anyone who wants to add? All right, there being none, we'll move on to the next question. Is it legal for the landlord to ask or enforce for full payment after ECQ? Or can the renter demand for the agreed installment basis for 3 months? Attorney Mel or Ms. Whirl, you may answer the question.
Okay. For the first question, is it legal for the landlord to ask or enforce for full payment after the ECQ? It depends. The landlord cannot demand either partial or full payment within the grace period provided by the memorandum circular. So after the grace period and the lessee did not advise the lessor of its availment of the 6-month amortization period, then their agreement or the terms and conditions of the contract will apply.
Attorney Mel, for the next question.
Yes po.
Can the lessor, before, can the lessor
the
demand? The lessor cannot demand because the MC says 6 months.
Or can the renter demand for the agreed installment basis for 3 months? The MC says 6 months. So kung 3 months lang yung dinidemand ng lessee, it's still within the 6-month installment period.
Thank you, Yusek and Attorney Mel. For the next question, for commercial spaces, are they required to pay rent during ECQ? And as a lessee, do we need to pay full amount of rent and other fees to our lessor during the lockdown months that we did not operate? Actually, this question is also of the same nature here with the questions in our chat. So maybe we can answer it as one here in this slide, please. Ms. Whirl, perhaps you can answer this po.
Thea, this question, for commercial spaces, are they required to pay rent during the ECQ? And as
Yes.
lessee, do we need to pay full amount of rent? So for
Yeah.
commercial spaces, it is very specific under our MC na those commercial owners na hindi naman nag-operate, they are not required to pay during the ECQ, MECQ, or GCQ period. Stated din sa ating supplemental MC. So the lessee need not to pay full amount of rent during the lockdown period. But yung ang hindi nila babayaran muna is those period covered during the community quarantine, that's part 17 for the ECQ up until sa GCQ period. So kung hindi pa sila nag-ooperate, hindi pa sila pwedeng i-force ng lessor to pay the rent. But stated here during the ECQ period, of course, hindi sila required to pay during the ECQ period.
So to add to that, Thea,
Yes.
dapat po maintindihan natin na the 30-day grace period is a grant. So nasa sa lessee na, kung ako lessee, meron naman akong kakayahan, I can still pay. Pero kung I have no capacity to pay at the moment, I can advise my lessor na I want to avail of the 30-day grace period or the 6-month amortization period.
Thank you, Ms. Pearl and Attorney Mel. There is a follow-up question here from the audience, both from Jen and from Nat. I'll read them. First is from Jen. How about the CUSA or the common use service area? Should the lessor also charge that to the lessee, even if the business ceased to operate during ECQ? And for Nat, it's also similar. Do we have any memorandum pertaining to CUSA or this common use service area or aircon rates still charged by the commercial area lessors? That is the malls to lessee affecting businesses which were not in operation during quarantine transition periods. And if there is, what can we as lessee do about them? If not, does the DTI have any plans or steps to help the lessees regarding this matter?
CUSA is not covered by any of the memorandum circulars issued by the DTI. And CUSA is also not covered by the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. So it will depend on the arrangement between the lessor and the lessee on this. Lessor, of course, may give additional concessions, but they are not mandated by any law.
Thank you, Yusek. Thank you, Ms. Word, and thank you, Attorney Mel. So for our next question,
can we demand rent for the duration of the community
this one is a
quarantine?
question from a lessor.
Yes. Okay, Thea, you're
Yes,
good?
Yusek, please.
Protection of the lessor, we always say that, well, we have said and we have made it clear that the lessor may not demand for rental payments during the duration of the community quarantine. There is also a grace period from the date of the lifting of the GCQ where only after which the lessor may demand for payment. The lessor is protected by the down payment and the deposits made by the lessee. So during the community quarantine and where the lessor needs also the funds, they can always make use of the down payment and the deposits made by the lessee. But of course, this does not, depending on the arrangement between the parties, this may be applied to future rents or to rental payments that may be, this may be applied to rental payments for the community quarantine, so there is no more arrears by the lessee. The lessor may always again demand or request for another down payment or deposit to cover electricity, utility bills, damages to the property should the contract end.
Thank you, Yusek. There is a follow-up question here from Rosemary Ong. Can the lessor impose that the lessee cannot get the security deposit if the lessee decide to terminate the contract after being granted a 3-month rental reprieve? This is for commercial lease.
Can you repeat the question, Thea?
Yes. From Rosemary Ong, can the lessor impose that the lessee cannot get the security deposit if the lessee decided to terminate the contract after being granted a 3-month rental reprieve?
Tagalog na lang kasi, guys.
Ano ulit? Ano? Thea, pakiulit. Sino yung sumigaw? Sana wala namang ganon. Ulit, pakiulit, Thea.
Okay. Pwede daw ba mag-impose ang lessor ng security pwede daw ba mag-impose ang lessor kung yung lessee ay hindi makakakuha ng security deposit? Kung yung lessee ay nag-decide na i-terminate yung contract pagkatapos mag-grant yung 3-month rental reprieve niya.
So we already said that any security deposit, down payment, or deposits made by the lessee may be applied to the rental fees accrued during the ECQ or MACQ or GCQ. Next question, Thea.
All right, next question, please.
Okay,
All right.
there are...
So that ends the question we got during the registration we had yesterday. So I'm going to read some questions here from the chat.